So welcome everyone to the Digital Alliances chapter. We've been wanting to put a series together for touch points around the career development piece. I think, one of the biggest parts of the alliances has always been catering for the professional development, hence the partnerships with certification companies, and more recently having a holding pen for recruitment support and mentorship as well within that, which falls under one of the pillars, which is the career development piece. So the session is recorded. I can edit anything out of it that you want. So please reference that if you're going to hands up and pose a question and ask for it to be cut out, because I can edit that out. But don't let that stop you. Nothing will be published until I have the green light from you all with that. So the dark arts and minefield of recruitment is what we're going to be focusing on today. I was recently in a position of redundancy, and despite my confidence and competence in many different areas, I was struggling to actually get recognized and noticed, right? So I think in this industry especially, and we have worked on a couple of white label opportunities with the alliances for creating a space for InfoSec and IT recruitment, where it's already a saturated market, but there's challenges along the way, right? So we have a session on how you become recognized, I suppose, or how are you being screened at the moment for roles that you're applying on, because people put down all varying different ways of what they think is relevant and important to job descriptions or industries that they're trying to progress their career on. And there is a system, I believe, or many systems that should be considered as you put yourself out there. So this session should benefit those who recruit, and it should benefit those who are candidates along the way, in terms of making or putting yourself in the best position for recognition for certain roles, especially as I see, certain InfoSec roles with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of applications on LinkedIn as an example. How would you stand out? Is there even a point to apply into those sorts of things when there's also numbers joining it? So we've got two partners who from the African continent, in Faye and Stef. They will give themselves an introduction, which is a lot better than what I can, and give it a lot more justice and give some context on their businesses and things like that. Full transparency, we have a partnership with both of their recruitment companies. Anyone who's placed into any of their roles, which they win a fee on, and anyone that onboards their services, we win a fee on that as well, right, to help us sustain the platform. So that's how they partner with us. But more importantly, they wanted to put their faces out there and actually let you guys know who they are and lead on this session here. So I'll pass you over to Faye and Stef. If you can both make yourselves known and do a short introduction and kick us off into the session. Myself and James will monitor the chat, so please utilize the chat if you've got any questions, and we'll pose them for you, or if you're willing to get involved, then raise your hand, and we'll interrupt if Faye or Stef have not noticed you there. So over to Faye and Stef.
Cool, yeah. So as I said, yeah, we've already done the introductions. Faye will handle a part of the presentation, and I'll handle the other part. Essentially, just a presentation on how candidates get screened both by HR and the ATS systems from different portals. I think it's good to know that if ever you're applying on any job portal or LinkedIn or any career portal, your CV will go through some kind of ATS process. And then just the outline of what will be. Cool, yeah. As I said, we'll cover 4 sections and then Q&As for you guys, just on understanding the HR screening process, how applicant tracking systems work, how recruiters actually use Boolean searches in recruitment. I think some of you might have used Boolean searches for other things in your line of work. Sure, I'm rejoining. And then how to optimize your professional profile. Faye will cover the first section on understanding HR processes. I'll do the middle two, and then Faye will take over from me again on optimizing your professional profile. So I'm going to go to the next slide, Faye, and then
I'll take over.
Yeah, just request that access.
There we go.
Oh, sorry, I just took it back by accident. I thought I had to allow it. Just request access again, please. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks, Stef. And thanks, Stef, for creating the slide deck for me or for us. It's greatly appreciated. So without further ado, let's talk about understanding the HR screening process. So a lot of you probably thinking, you know, you're really qualified for a position and your CV is not getting seen. So we like to call it that, we like to term that the black hole. So think about your recruiters or your hiring managers as they're the first filter, right? So you are going to want to make sure that your CV obviously gets through that first filter. You know, if you're a senior or not, you know, you still want to make sure that your CV speaks to the exact thing that you do in order for it to get through that initial screening. We're not talking about the technical stuff. We're talking about the bare minimum. If it's not there, it's not going to be seen. Remember, it's not if your CV is not in the right words, the system and the recruiter won't know it's there. A lot of the time as well, I must let you know that hiring managers or people in HR or talent acquisition, they don't necessarily know exactly what it is that the role requires. So you need to make it as clear as possible on your CVs, because they are going to have a checklist and they're going to go through that. And if it's not there, then chances are it's not going to be seen. And you're not going to get through that initial screening. The criteria for shortlisting candidates. We use ATS systems, which Stef will talk about in length, which are programmed with keywords and filters based on the job spec. If those exact keywords don't appear clearly, your CV may not even reach the person. So you'll either apply via a direct link to the hiring manager, or it's an internal thing, or it's via your network, which I'll obviously speak about later, why your network is so important. But you know, if chances are your CV is going to go through an ATS system, and that's going to either make you or break you with regards to if your CV gets through to the next person. We also check for obvious fit. If your listed skills match the job, do your job titles make sense? So for those of you who like to be creative with your job titles, please make sure that although you know we want you to use them, we also want you to include the other relevant keywords that make it a bit more, let's say, mainstream. Your degrees and your certificates often matter if you're required and missing, and they're missing on your CV. So make sure that absolutely everything is there. The automated and manual review process. So it's a two-step dance. ATS filters, then human scans for the most part. So let's speak about that. As the manual review stage, we're looking at layout clarity and red flags. So I'm also going to just point out here, you know, pretty CVs are not necessarily going to make you stand out more. So be very aware of that. You know, if you are sending your CV off to a graphic designer to get it done, you're probably wasting good money. At the manual review stage, we're looking at layout, clarity, and red flags. Okay, if you get past this, congratulations, your profile moves to the decision makers for deeper evaluation. But I think, you know, I know that we're always quick to want to put ourselves forward as being, you know, as great as we are, but we need to think about the gatekeepers at the end of the day. What are they looking for, and what is their level of understanding for the roles that they're filling? So, be cognizant of that and make sure that the information that you're putting on your CV is relevant to exactly what you're doing. Don't brush over things if you don't think it's important. Put it all in there.
Yeah, as Faye mentioned, the ATS is essentially the black hole. It's where everybody's CVs goes to die. And there's a stage where I'll drop off of the presentation and share my screen just to show you what I mean. And with Amy's CV that we did a different version for her to use on her LinkedIn and CV itself. But essentially, just this section is how ATS systems work. All companies have them, especially the major ones, recruitment companies themselves. We have our own internal ATS and CRMs that keep our information. You can think of VNet, Career Junction, Executive Placement, Careers 24. All of those has the same thing. Yeah, let's get into it. Yeah, what is an ATS? Essentially, it's a database that you're loading your CV into, and I'm not sure if there's only cybersecurity people in here, but if there's any data people as well, you know how hard it is sometimes to actually pass information if it's not formatted correctly. But what an ATS will do is,
Yeah, sorry. Keywords, one of the questions that has come up in the chat there, keywords. People have seen people add keyword sections to the end of the CVs. ATS systems, do they work on that specifically from your experience?
I've actually had this sort of like as a hack to put in a bunch of text in on white paper, because I think an ATS would still pick it up if you had a section at the bottom of your CV, but with a text font color in white, the ATS should still pick it up because it's picking up text and not color, if you know what I mean. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if it would work. This is the thought that I had when I was speaking to a candidate once. But we'll also, yeah, let's see if we work at 100%. So we'll get to the scoring part and ranking part on how it actually works. But the keyword and the resume passing is probably the most important, and that's just how you formatted your own CV. Then keyword and identification. I'm sorry, there's no pointer, but I'm pointing in with my mouse.
No, it's fine. No,
I'm pointing. I don't know. Can you see my mouse?
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
Oh shit.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I was thinking. I was like, I'm pointing here, and I don't know if you guys know where I am. Keyword identification, scoring, and ranking. Those are probably the most important one. And then some ATS systems also, especially the career portals on actual companies, have sometimes when you submit applications, it's got questionnaires at the end, and those are not to be taken very literally if you are able to fill one out. I think Faye James Lee, you were on a call with me when I told you a story about a guy that kept getting rejected by Capitec for having 4 years and 11 months experience, but he kept answering the question honestly. We had asked him if he had 5 to 7 years experience. And, you know, if it's something like that, I would say just lie and say 5 years experience, because it's 1 month extra, but the ATS itself will reject you immediately after you answer that question that you don't have 5 years. Or if you have similar certifications, but it's not the ones listed on the questionnaire, and you know they are very similar, I would say still answer yes to the question, because that questionnaire will get you rejected immediately if you answer no, obviously.
Yeah. So are we looking at essential skills just on that point then? Are we looking at, you know, typically duration in the industry, certifications relevant to the role, etc. Are we looking for equivalent and playing down that line of
if there is that questionnaire of like, you know, do you have a CISP qualification? No, but you might have CISM. And the others, but you know, you as a, I don't know if there are any I know Shuaib is a CIO, but you as a CIO know that, you know, a person with maybe a CISP and a citizen, but not the other certification could still do the job.
Yeah.
They're going to say no on the ATS, and they're going to get rejected by a computer instead of actually making it through to the next step HR person, which is also problematic because the next step HR person might also not know the relevance of your certification.
Yeah.
And then
sorry mate, just on the keywords bit. So are we advising to use that block of text to generate in white on a white background?
I've never tried it, so if anyone wants to give it a try, and see if it works. I've never tried it myself because obviously I'm not on the job market, and I don't apply people through ATS systems and career portals because we work directly with clients. But I don't know if it would work.
Okay, thanks, mate.
But I mean, when you highlight over text that you've made the font color white, then you see the text. So I'm assuming that an ATS would see the same, that it's there, but it's not visible to the naked eye. Obviously, just save it as a PDF, and not as a Word document, because then they'll be able to see it there. As I said, ATS scoring and keyword matching is essentially the first part that your CV goes through when you are applying to jobs. The resume parsing section is the most important part that you have control over, because it is about how you format your CVs. Certain sections that I'll get to in optimizing your CV for ATS are better to leave out. You can keep them in, but it will confuse the ATS at the end of the day. Keyword matching is one of the core functions of the ATS. So I don't know if that white font section part would work, but there are other ways of working it into your CV. Just try to weave it into your responsibilities. Try to get as much of it into the summary as you can, and get as many of them close to each other as you can. Talk about skills matrices and stuff and optimization sections. Yeah. And then the ranking and scoring basically works off of the keyword matching and aligning your experience with the job requirements. So whatever the job requirements are, that would have been passed by the ATS first. And then it becomes a thing of, what is that job title? How do they name the certification on their jobs? Because a lot of people might have, the CISP qualification, but they're using the abbreviation and not the full actual qualification name. So in those instances, I would say always use the abbreviation and the full name when you are listing your certifications, just so that you do cover both. I'll show you now why when we get to how recruiters actually search. And then on the flagging for human review, you'd have to make it through these first three parts to actually get you, and then your application gets scored. But when we get to the searching, our recruiter search part, I'll explain to you why that is important and how it pushes you up. And you should think about it as nobody is probably a social media person, but you get those SEO specialists that basically all they do is push words into websites so that they score high up when you're searching them. Think of your CV as the same approach. Get as many of those things into your CV that'll push it up in relevance. It's tough out there, Schwab. And then formatting and structure. As Faye mentioned, it's not always about the sexiest CV. It's more about the structure of your CV, using standard headings that ATS knows to look for, avoiding complex formatting and text elements that could confuse the ATS. And the standard headings are the most important, because even the CRM ATS system that we use at OutsideCapital is called Ventura. If I put a CV in where there aren't standard headings, it struggles to pass the information of that candidate in. and then I mean the whole thing is filled, but you can at least still search the text. So I'm also reading the chat here. I'm going to switch it off while I'm chatting. Good headings to use are things like, you know, your professional experience, skills, education, certifications, projects, awards, and languages. Although I've seen people use languages on CV. I don't think people really search for languages much anymore. I don't know if I think it depends where you're applying. If you're applying in a country where, you know, Portuguese speaking is a thing that you do need, I would say definitely add it. But if you're applying to in-country roles, I don't think it matters too much. Avoid complex formatting, and I mean these include things like tables. Skills matrices are probably the hardest thing for an ATS to actually pass. Some people have those tables that I've seen on the side where it's not a table, it's a skill, but then the level is, you know, out of 5, and it's 3 out of 5 colored blocks. It looks great, but at the end of the day, it's going to mess with how it gets passed and how it gets searched. And I'll show you guys how that information comes up in a search for us as recruiters. Text boxes don't work great. I don't know. I've seen a lot of Word CVs where people add the information in text boxes instead of just using a normal Word document, and that again messes with how the ATS passes your information through, and it doesn't always. Faye's got a question.
Now, I just wanted to just add, because you're talking about the text box, I want to just say that if you're going to be putting your keywords in a text box or in your CV the way, you know, we think it might hack the system, you know, approach with caution, because chances are it's actually going to hinder the search. That's all from me.
Thanks, Faye. That adds on to Warren's question. Thank you for that. I wanted to dig after to help Warren out with that one. Before we get to that point, how do we know if an organization is using an ATS system?
I would say work on the assumption that any organization with a career portal that redirects you to something else, MCI Direct Hire, Workday, SAP Success Factors, anything that when you're applying it redirects you to one of those. Know that they're using an ATS. Likely that they're not using an ATS if you're applying to one of those organizations that make you basically take your CV and copy and paste every section of your CV into it. Then they probably don't have an ATS that's working the way it should. But even then, I mean, you're using the same CV, and I think the purpose is to first use LinkedIn uses an ATS and a scoring system. That I know for a fact, because I've seen the back end of job applications, and I've seen people score very low that then I still reach out to just because I actually looked at their profile, but they didn't. But their title was correct, but LinkedIn scores them low based on keywords and content on their profile. So LinkedIn for sure uses an ATS system.
That's the example you have later, isn't it, Stef? On with is it easy apply? So the LinkedIn
easy apply will use your LinkedIn profile. So that's why it's also important to keep your LinkedIn profile itself actually like similar to your CV. So whatever you have on your CV, copy and paste over to your LinkedIn. Graphics and images. A lot of people put it in the actual logo of their certification and things like that. It takes up a lot of space on your CV. It won't get passed. It doesn't matter in terms of, you know, you making it through or not. What's more important is the text elements, and then
Sorry, mate. I'm cutting across you a lot here. Now I've got show up for a question. I know you've touched on it just now about the black hole. So Shoaib's obviously done a bit of work on his CV to make it ATS friendly, but still feels it's falling into the black hole. Advice on that: is it amending your CV by the role because the ATS is scoring based on the job description, unique to that job description. Is that potentially why that's happening, or would you have any other advice as to why that may be happening?
So Faye actually covers that one on the branding section. I like you aligning it per job, but in general, LinkedIn, I think in general is a pain to try to apply on. If possible, ever just either directly to an HR person if you can. If there's sometimes you'll see the LinkedIn ad on LinkedIn, and then you'll see if you go to the actual career portals, you might then see the actual recruiter's email at the company. I would say then rather email the recruiter as well, so it makes it past that, because ATS systems aren't great, they're flawed. It's not something that I rely on heavily. I'm more of a search recruiter, and I'll show you guys how your CV structure still affects how we then find you through Boolean searches and that. But I think also just to note, the market out there at the moment is super tough, and a lot of applications you and I can both say this because we don't work internally at any companies, and I'm sure some other participants here can attest to it. A lot of roles we work are roles that aren't even roles as recruiters, and a lot of roles that you're applying to, you can assume are the same thing. A lot of roles get advertised, but they were never meant to go to a person outside of the organization.
Correct.
A lot of it is just compliance. We advertise, we got these applications, this guy that's with us is still better qualified. We get it a lot as recruiters, and obviously then we never get your feedback, and we'll just keep saying I don't have feedback until eventually the client 3 months later says to us the role has been filled, we went to someone internal. I mean, I can share loads of horror stories of where you thought you were getting. I've had one where I had interviews set up, and then a day before the interviews were set up, they called me and they said they've decided to go with someone that they have in Egypt to rather run the South African division. So that happens. It's not always about the ATS and the black hole. Sometimes it's just about internal policies that none of us would know about, and there is no workaround to that. I think the only workaround you have is to make yourself stand out as much as possible, and at least get that initial call if you can.
Cool.
And then so we covered the complex formatting. Text is king, I think, in the space of recruitment. I wouldn't say the more text the better. I think it's about the relevance of the text and where it's structured and how it's structured in your CV. Always, obviously, save your CV in references. Personally, I don't mind when people say references available on request. We only call the references anyway when there's an offer impending.
Correct. Yeah.
We don't call references just because we're going to call you, or just because we call you. I'd never really call a reference unless a person's already immediately available. I would have to most of the time call their last reference just to confirm why they left. But references, you don't even have to put in references available upon request, which a lot of people do on their CVs. It's not something. No recruiter is going to call your references, and you're giving your references personal information away by putting it on your CV.
Just to add there, Stef, on those references, you are actually giving the recruiter or the hiring manager an opportunity to contact them and give them the job that they actually had you in mind for.
Yeah. If especially if you're a little bit more junior than the role and you apply with a CV that has your reference, the person might see your CV and see, I don't want you, but I want your line manager.
Exactly.
And then you put that there. And then in the reverse, recruiters, I don't personally do it myself because when I started out, I had a few bad experiences when people asked me, where did you get my number? And the answer should never be on the reference on a person's CV. I learned that in my first few months of recruitment. Don't use those numbers as business development.
No.
But text is king. As much text as you can, and then avoid. I've seen, and I'm gonna just stop sharing quickly for this section. I was gonna get to the right section. I was gonna stop sharing quickly for this section, and then I'll show you what and I don't know how people save it like this or why they save it like this, but they save their CVs in a PDF format that isn't text. And I don't know if any of you have ever done it, but I've had a few candidates save it. So I couldn't find a CV that actually, because I can't remember who did it last, but like I can't highlight any of this text. I don't know how they've saved this PDF, and you also can't find any words. If you can check my searching chapter, and I've never seen I don't know how people save their CVs like that, but I've seen CVs saved like that. If you're applying with a CV like this, you're never making it through any ATS because you are applying with a blank page picture. One copy from secure PDF. So that's maybe why people are saving it. Thanks, Schwab. I don't know people save their CVs as secure PDF. But I've seen it on and Heineken does with all their job descriptions, but I've seen it on people's CVs as well. So obviously avoid saving it as that. David.
Thanks, Steph. Just a quick question. You say text is king, but one of the recommendations that I've been given in my career is keep your CV short and succinct, like no longer than 3 or 4 pages. Even though we could all write, a 10-page, or some of us a 40-page novel on our careers and
Stop showing off now, David.
showcase the stuff that we've done and the projects we've worked on. But I mean, what is it? Is it the short one? And I also asked a question earlier about the cover letter, because a cover letter offers an opportunity to add additional information in which isn't covered in your CV, or that you just want to embellish potentially. How and then again, Faye, to your question or your comment, earlier about keeping the pertinent information in, which implies to me, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that our CVs should be standard, including all the pertinent stuff that we've done, generic, let's say, and then the cover letter is the thing that is specific to the role we're applying for. And I'm busy going through the recruiting process, and it takes 4 or 5 hours just to respond to a single job application, because I'm rewriting my CV, I'm rewriting my cover letter, I'm doing research on the company to make sure that they're okay as well, a good fit for me and my personality, location, salary, yada, yada, yada. So, I mean, can you guys maybe give us some clear indication on my first question around the length of a CV? Does it matter if it's short or long? My second question really around the cover letter. How important is the cover letter? Should we put everything in one document in a CV, including the pertinent information? Because if I'm writing a 10-page CV, I don't need a cover letter. And then third of all, the standard components that you mentioned. I don't feel, because I've just been sending my applications to black holes for the last 6 months. I don't feel that my standard CV is good enough for a job application. I think I need to customize every single time I apply for a job to go and be very specific to the wording of the job application that's posted. And like you said, even if the recruiter doesn't understand the role they're recruiting for, even if ATS doesn't have a clue what role they're recruiting for, because it's just a machine, we look at the job spec and go, yeah, of course I have that skill set, but we still reject it because we haven't written it exactly how the job spec has been written and has it been posted on whatever mechanism they're posting these roles on. So I don't know if you guys can help with some of that clarification.
So thanks for the question, David. Look, from my opinion, I think that, what we tell all our candidates is we want your full CV. So although I'm saying that we want the pertinent information, I want you to put it in as much in such a way that it's understandable to anybody. So if it is someone reading it at the end of the day that isn't completely au fait with what you do, they can understand it, right? And because you're giving a full CV, I don't think, I mean, I don't remember when last I actually received a cover letter, to be quite honest. I also, pretty much like Stef, I do a lot of headhunting as opposed to, doing ad response, where it comes through the ATS system. And then we look at it. I'm doing headhunting, and I'm then looking at your LinkedIn profile, where I would want you to talk about, you could actually use your LinkedIn profile as your cover letter, so to speak. So, I mean, you're going to highlight all your achievements. You're going to, all your duties and responsibilities are going to be on your LinkedIn, but I'll speak about that a little bit more in detail. But that's my opinion. Stef, what do you say?
Well, so cover letters for me don't matter because I don't necessarily read cover letters, and the only time I get cover letters is if our clients specifically request them. I've seen applications that say cover letter needs to be included. I go more with the approach. So my cat just wants to, she's gonna keep walking back up and forth until
I was wondering what you were picking up earlier.
No, she comes down and back, but I have to put her there. Otherwise, she's going to just keep walking back and forth here. I prefer, instead of a cover letter, is just a really good summary section that does encompass everything on your CV as much as possible. And I'll show you an example of that on Amy's CV that we did for before this call, and how that works, because unless a cover letter is requested, I would say, don't even waste your time on writing a cover letter for each position. If you want to cater your CV to each position, you can save a lot of time. I'll make a note, David, and I'll get back to Lee on it, because I recently saw on GitHub there's some open source project where some guy designed a thing where you put in a job in your CV and it'll cater your CV to each job. So if you're going to do it, that might save you a lot of time. I just want to say job, and I'll send a link to Lee. It's on GitHub. I just have to go find it. CV writer. That might save you a lot of time. And I try to do one for every role is a bit much, because you might not have to make all the changes always. You might just have to add in a few things, but it's better to add in than to take out. Rather have more information than less information. But I'm with Faye on the short CV thing. To me, is I don't like short CVs, because we have to answer to our clients on like, where's this experience and where's that experience. I would say if you're at the level of having 15-20 years experience, the first 5 years of your career probably doesn't really even register on an ATS anymore anyway. Focus on the roles that you're doing now and the roles that you have the most important projects in, and expand on those, shorten the rest just so that they are still there, and give the timeline. But just to make it shorter, but more is better. But obviously there is a limit to what is more, because I've received a CV of 30 pages and 20 of those pages was the guy's project list that he took from Excel and put into a Word document. So those things could probably be sent separately. But shorten your previous roles. If it's when you were far more junior, just keep it there as a timeline, because at the end of the day, it's not, if you're applying to a CIO role, nobody is going to be looking at your first job as a software developer. It's good to still keep those languages and tech stacks and things in your CV there, so that would still come up on an ATS. And maybe just some, instead of roles and responsibilities, list projects that you've worked on, so that it gives an overview of the type of work that you did in that role as a software developer. I don't know if that answers your question.
Thanks, Stef. I've got 3 questions in the chat. Oh, sorry, go on. David, did you want to come in there?
I just want to say thanks, Stef. Appreciate it.
yeah, obviously when you are doing the optimization of your CV, I'm going to try to go through this faster because I want Faye to get to the next part. Avoid the buzzword overuse. It is a quantity versus quality aspect. If you're going to use buzzwords like, results orientated, innovative, dynamic, passionate, none of those things register on an ATS. It's just you describing you as a person. But people are looking for you to match a specification. Job titles are also something that you want to look at when you are doing your optimization, because you might write CISO, but the recruiter is going to look for Chief Information Security Officer, and I'll show you guys examples of that on the next slide. Missing critical keywords that might be invisible to search engines are things like when you're using the acronyms for SIEM, SIR, IAM, NIST, all your tools that you're using, try to group the stuff together as much as possible, and that's where we'll get to that summary section at the top that you contain most of your information in, and keep it contextual in terms of the roles that you are applying for. The next one. These are the examples of what I just spoke about. When you are doing something like this, rather try to back everything up in terms of not using just this as buzzwords. Oh, sorry, I went to the next slide by clicking. Not using just the buzzwords, but trying to quantify your achievements. Non-standard versus industry recognized job titles. Try not to use words like this on your CV or your LinkedIn profile, for instance, because that's going to make you unsearchable. Rather use the things, and as I said, Chief Information Officer, put in brackets CISO, Chief Information Officer, CIO, Chief Digital Officer, CDO. Try to use both versions of the words for everything. And then, make, when you are Cyber Ninja, I've seen it. When you are making your resume, try to write the thing in such a way that as you're explaining what you're including your SIs, for example, your SIM solutions, Splunk and QRadar, so that it always appears next to each other, because I'll show you guys the examples of how it actually comes up when we are searching within searches. I'm not going to go into how Boolean searches work exactly, but this is essentially the main way that recruiters search through on job portals, X-ray searching on Google, in LinkedIn, Career Junction. This is when we are actually doing searches and not working through an ATS of applications. But I'm sure everybody knows probably what these Boolean operators do, so I can explain them to you, but I've just got some examples on the next page. For instance, this is what a Boolean search could look like. I wouldn't just put in all of this. I'll do it modular and add in different sections and try to get to where I can get the most candidates that are fit. But essentially, this is what an ATS does at the same time. This is just us manually searching through databases of candidates. So you have to think of it this way when you are applying to jobs, that we'll search for those types of titles. And BI, some things that I made a note of here, things like Power BI. Some people spell it Power BI, one word, Power space BI. Those things also matter, because if the recruiter doesn't use both in their search, just normal Power BI and Power space BI, if you're the space guy, then you get excluded from the search. So just bear that in mind when you are doing your CV as well. There's no way around that one, unless you purposefully write everything in the different ways on your CV, Power BI and Power BI. But that happens, and I don't know if there's a really good way to get around that. These are the examples of how we actually do it. And that's really small on my screen. But this, for example, is how it comes up to us after we are searching on job platforms. So we don't necessarily open because we lose credits for every profile that we open when we are using job portals and that for searching. But so we're looking for grouping of words to fit together, and unless they fit together well enough, I might get a CV. I might get a CV that says reported into Chief Technology Officer, but it's still going to come up there. But I'm looking for more grouping and something that is relevant to my role. So this is what I eventually see before I decide to open up a profile and lose a credit. So the more of it I see grouped together, obviously, the more likely I am to open up a credit. And also to note that on most of the job boards that you're applying to, PNet, Career Junction, and that it filters by, it sorts by relevance. So it pushes your CV up by the way it's structured and the text in your CV. This one here is a system that we use to search through LinkedIn instead of using LinkedIn itself, because Boolean on LinkedIn, you can't make a Boolean long enough. But yeah, so we scan through CVs like this, and that's why the more text you have in your CV doesn't matter to me necessarily. And I don't think it should matter to anyone else, because at the end of the day, the more you have, but try to fill it with useful information like projects and things like that, rather than just roles and responsibilities, so that you also have talking points when you eventually get that interview, and you might have named projects that they're busy with. And for the people in the banking and telco space, always best to name your business unit that you're in, because that also obviously determines, they might be looking for payments, or they might be looking for someone with insurance or investment banking. Keep that in mind. But yeah, I just wanted to show you guys how this actually comes up in a search when we're using these Boolean strings. Yeah, I think this is the second last one. I'll show you some examples, but yeah. I'm trying to align your stuff with industry language. Use the variations, as I said, on your CV, Chief Information Security Officer and CISO. I would say your LinkedIn scheme, the structure of your LinkedIn profile is a very good structure to follow for your CV, because then you can make your CV first, and that's what I did with Amy, is we made the CV first and then just copy everything over to LinkedIn. This one should actually be above them, but do your CV first and then do your LinkedIn. Research keywords that are in your roles. David, to your question, I wouldn't say you have to always adapt it to everyone, but if you can get your CV that mentions, 90% of the job spec that you apply to, you should be fine. And continuously update. And if you want to, after you've done all of this, go and see if you can find your own profile on LinkedIn by putting in a Boolean search string and see if it comes up. And then I've got the example profiles that I'm just going to unshare this again so I can share my screen with you guys again. So basically we updated Amanda's CV and LinkedIn profile. And I'll just show you guys the side-by-side view. So left is the original, and then right is the one that we made. You see, your CV was very visually appealing, and it actually had a lot of good information, and I didn't have to ask you for projects and achievements because you were already listing them in your CV. But this CV would pass through better because of how this kind of stuff gets passed by. And Word also has a way that you can do column writing, and I think on Microsoft Word, if you just do column writing, that's probably also better if you wanted to do it this way, where you have your certifications on one side maybe and all your professional affiliations. Just don't put them in tables, rather do the split column sections. And then David, this was to your question on cover letters. I prefer to, for all my candidates, to do a write-up like this, where on the first page you essentially have the entire summary of their experience, qualifications, their current role, accomplishments that they have, and then the technology and skills, which will be later in the CV again. But the grouping matters because of the way that I showed you how it comes up in our searches and how it highlights things to us, because otherwise it highlights things in different sections. But better to have a nice professional summary that then groups everything together. And my things is in my way here. And then we did the same for Amanda's LinkedIn profile. Left was the original one that she had, and then right is the one that we made. So we redid the summary, obviously, from what we did on his CV first, did the CV, then did the LinkedIn, and then a LinkedIn profile like this for recruiters is difficult because a lot of internal recruiters, especially, they're not going to reach out to you to ask you what you're doing in this role. So it's better to, as I said, take your CV that you've made, copy and paste everything into LinkedIn. Obviously, you can see the CV is a little bit longer. This is the LinkedIn CV. Copy it all into LinkedIn because all of this adds into your searchability at the end of the day. Like, I wouldn't be able to tell from this experience if I'm looking for the right person, but if I get to this profile on Amanda's LinkedIn, then obviously I know what I need to know to be able to reach out to her.
I just want to add something for mention here. You know, a lot of stuff a lot of people are going to AI to recreate their CV for each job spec, whatever the case is. But ATSs are slowly evolving, and they are going to be able to pick up when something is too AI generated, and it's going to be flagged. So I've had an incident where no one inside our organization, but a big corporate were so impressed by somebody's CV, and then they flew them up from Cape Town to Johannesburg to do the interview, and they were shit. Excuse my French. They were great on paper, so just be aware of that as well.
Yeah, because AI will add all sorts of stuff into
Correct.
your CV that they think is
Yeah,
relevant to the let's say LLM, right? Guys, I'm really, really grateful for that session. I've got loads of questions I'm going to be emailing you after. And I think I'd like to poll by the sections that you guys have highlighted, the 4 sections that were part of the agenda for today. I'd like to poll into the group to see if they'd like a further session on any of those to unpack it further. I think we did it justice on some of them, but I think some deserved a little bit more. But yeah, just from my side, really grateful. And we've needed it for so long, right? Because we get myself, James, Bernard, probably more recently since he joined, but you know, we've supported people into roles, but we're not skilled in that space, right? You know, we're leveraging the network, which is the intangible version of getting people into roles, and there's no consistency or pattern to that, right? And I think you know, having you guys here gives it a lot more justice and a lot more depth to the conversation. So if you want to follow up with Stef or Faye or both, then both of them are in the Alliance's recruitment support subgroup within the forum, within the WhatsApp forum. If you need to follow up with them, give them a shout. If you not sure who's who, then just ask and I can make some introductions, which I already have. So get ready for some messages, guys. I've had a few asks already.
That's
okay.
Great. That's great.
So yeah, so really grateful. Next steps from my side is editing this, mostly me out at the start, and when the slides weren't working at the start, we'll get this out there, and we'll create an insights report based on what we've got out of this, as well as an additional summary to your slides. But your slides have got a lot in there already. So thank you very much from my side. Any last things from Stef and Faye, if you guys got anything to add, or you good?
Stef, you can go first.
At the moment, but the other thing I will say is I'll send those GitHub links to this. There's one that's good for CV writing, and there's the other one that's good for matching your job to certain job specifications. If you're going to go that route, I'll go and find them under my liked repository. This is my other one, but he can jump onto the thing himself. I'll just go and find those things, and then Lee, I'll send them to you. I'll send them in the group on WhatsApp. Maybe just
Grateful.
send
Yeah, I'm
these
going
are
to
these are the links
consolidate it
go.
all. Yeah, so it'll all be in on one landing page for us anyway, right? So I'll
Mm-mm.
consolidate it all, ping it all to me, so it's not in bit part, and then we'll put it out there for everyone. But thank you, mate. Faye?
I just want to say that I just want to say thank you to everybody in the room who has reached out to me so far. There are a few people that I'll be having coffee with over the next couple of weeks. So if anyone here is in Gauteng, I'm in Fourways, and we have great offices here in Fourways, and my door is always open for, I like to have strong relationships with my candidates and my clients. So if you want to come in for a cup of coffee, just drop me a message and we'll sort it out. You can come in.
Thank you, Faye. Nice. So I think, is that the same for you, Steph? You're on Camps Bay, right? In Cafe Caprice. Is that normally where we find you up at the beach?
Actually, no, I stay in Tokai and I ride a bicycle to work. So if you want to have coffee, you have to come a little bit. It is an electric bicycle, so I can do some distance. But yeah, if it's coffee during the day, you might have to come closer to the southern suburbs for me to reach you.
Cool. Video link.
Yeah.
Thank you very much again, guys. I really appreciate it. And I think this is the start of a few touch points for us. Okay. So really grateful, and thanks for the continued support. Okay.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers,
Thanks,
guys.
everyone.
Take care,
Cheers.
everyone. Reach out
Bye.
if you need anything. Take care. Bye now.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.